There is a word that follows this man everywhere. Yarad. It means to go down. He goes down to a foreign town for his wife. He goes down into a vineyard he was forbidden to enter. He goes down, at the end, to a prison in Gaza. The strongest man in the story of Israel. And the whole story is written as a descent. He could tear a lion apart with his hands, but he could not hold a single secret. He was set apart for God before he was born. But he spent his life trying to belong to the people God sent him to fight. His name was Samson. This is the story of how the strongest man went down, and of what he was really a picture of. To understand Samson, you have to stand where he stood, not in the safe hills of Israel, but on the seam between two worlds. The land in his day had 3 levels. High in the east, the rugged Israelite highlands. Low in the west, the flat coastal plain, and a new power there. And between them, a strip of rolling foothills called the Shephelah. The word simply means lowland. It was a border that never held still. Villages changed hands, cultures mixed. Nobody owned it cleanly. Archaeologists digging these hills call it a seesaw, as we saw in our last episode. You dig one town and find no pig bones, an Israelite marker. You walk 4 miles west, and the ground is full of them. 2 peoples, living almost on top of each other. And on the coast sat the newcomers. The Philistines. They were not native to this land. They came by sea, from the Aegean world. From Crete, the Bible's Kaftor. Egyptian temple walls show them arriving as raiders in feathered helmets. Then they settled and built 5 great cities: Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Ekron, Gath. And they held one thing Israel did not: iron. They kept the forges to themselves. An Israelite farmer had to go down to the Philistines just to sharpen his plow. That was the quiet arithmetic of power. Whoever controls the iron controls the peace. And here is the strangest line in the whole book. Scripture says the Philistines ruled Israel for 40 years. Not that they fought Israel, that they ruled it, and Israel had stopped minding. That is the real crisis of this story, not slavery, comfort. A people so used to the chain that they no longer felt it. Into that comfortable silence, God sends a man who cannot sit still. Before Samson does anything, something is done to him. An angel comes to a childless woman. She will have a son, the angel says, and that son will be a Nazirite from the womb. We should stop on that word, because everything hangs on it. A Nazirite was a person set apart by a vow, an ordinary Israelite who chose, for a time, to live closer to God than the law required. The vow had 3 parts: touch no product of the vine, no wine, no grape, nothing. Never cut your hair. Let it grow as a visible sign that you belong to God. And never go near a dead body, not even for your own mother or father. The uncut hair had a name, Nezer, a crown. The Nazirite wore his consecration on his own head, where everyone could see it. Normally, this vow lasted 30 days. Samson's was for life, and that created a problem the ancient rabbis argued over for centuries, because Samson breaks all 3 rules. He drinks, he handles corpses. In the end, he loses his hair. The rabbis were so troubled they invented a special legal category just for him. They called it the Nazir Shimshon, the Samson Nazirite, a separate box, because the ordinary rules could not contain the man. But hold the plain picture in your mind: a man born wearing a crown he did not ask for, a crown he would spend his whole life forgetting he wore. The first thing the grown Samson does is go down to a Philistine town called Timnah. He sees a woman there, and he wants her. His parents beg him to marry among his own people. He answers with 3 words that define him: she is right in my eyes. Not right, not good, right in his eyes. The man of sight who never learns to see. But listen to what the narrator quietly adds. His parents did not know this was from the Lord. God was seeking an occasion against the Philistines. The marriage is doomed on purpose. God is using Samson's appetite as a crowbar to pry Israel loose from its comfortable chains. On the road down, a lion attacks him. The spirit rushes on him, and he tears it apart bare-handed. Later, he passes the carcass again, and inside it, bees and honey. He scoops it out and eats. He tells no one where it came from. Because a Nazirite must never touch the dead, he has just fed his parents honey from a corpse and hidden it. Now the wedding. The text calls it a mishteh, and the word matters. It comes from the verb to drink. A mishteh was not a dinner. It was a 7-day drinking banquet. For a Nazirite sworn off the vine, hosting one is the whole vow, mocked. The Philistines send 30 young men to keep him company. We read that and picture groomsmen. That is not what they were. Samson came to their town alone, with no family, no clan at his back. 30 local men were not friends. They were guards, a surveillance detail, a polite cage around a dangerous outsider. And into that core, Samson throws a riddle. In the ancient world, a riddle was not a party game. It was combat. Kings staged riddle duels instead of wars. Lose the riddle, and you paid tribute. You were shamed before your rivals. So Samson wagers 30 fine linen garments, a small fortune, on a puzzle. Out of the eater came something to eat. Out of the strong came something sweet. Here is the trick. There was no possible way to solve it. Folklorists have a name for this kind of riddle. They call it a neck-riddle, a riddle whose answer is a private, secret event only the teller witnessed, named for the condemned man who saves his own neck with a puzzle no judge can crack. Only Samson saw the lion. Only Samson saw the honey. He has not built a riddle. He has built a trap. And there is an older echo underneath it. Around the Mediterranean, people believed bees could be born from a dead animal. They called it bugonia, life swarming out of a rotting carcass. Sweetness, out of death. It was a picture of resurrection. The Philistines cannot solve it, so they turn on the bride. Tell us the answer, they say, or we burn you and your father's house. She weeps on Samson until he breaks and tells her. She hands it straight to her people, and Samson knows exactly what happened. If you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have solved my riddle. A brutal line. To plow with another man's animal was theft, and plowing was also an old, crude word for taking another man's wife. They did not outthink him. They reached past him to the woman and pulled the secret out. The spirit falls on him again. He goes down to Ashkelon, kills 30 men, and pays his debt with dead men's clothes. The wedding is over. His wife is given to the best man, and the frontier, for the first time in 40 years, is on fire. What follows is the most destructive feud in the whole book. Samson comes back for his wife and learns she has been given away. So he takes his revenge on the harvest itself. He catches 300 foxes. He ties torches between their tails, and he drives them into the standing grain. The fields burn. The vineyards burn. The olive groves burn. In a single night, he guts the Philistine economy. The Philistines answer in kind. They hunt down the bride who had betrayed him, and they burn her and her father alive, the very death she had tried to escape. Samson strikes back, harder still. And now the violence spills onto his own people. The men of Judah come out, 3,000 of them, not to fight the Philistines, to arrest Samson and hand him over. Read that slowly. Israel's own deliverer, tied up by his own tribe to keep the enemy happy. That is how deep the comfort went. They would rather bind their rescuer than risk their peace. They hand him over bound. Then the spirit rushes on him. The ropes fall off his arms like burnt thread. He grabs the only weapon within reach, the jawbone of a dead donkey, and with it, he kills 1,000 men. Another corpse in his hand. Another vow in ruins. And yet the Spirit came. That is the uncomfortable heart of Samson. God keeps using him, not because he is clean, but because God has a purpose the man keeps stumbling toward, even in his sin. The fires burn out. The feud goes quiet. And Samson goes down, one last time, to a valley called Sorek. Even the name is a warning. Sorek means choice vine, the red grape. The one place on earth a Nazirite should never lose his heart. And there he loves a woman named Delilah. Her name is a riddle of its own. In Hebrew, it plays on the word for night, Layla. And Samson's name comes from Shemesh, the sun. The sun falling into the night. The old scholars loved that so much, they once claimed the whole story was just a myth of day and darkness. Modern readers don't buy the myth, but they admit the writer knew exactly what he was doing with those two names. There is another root in her name. Dalal. To weaken, to hang down, to drain. The Talmud said her name was a prophecy. She weakened his strength, his purpose, his will. Here is what most people never notice. Every woman in Samson's story so far had been a Philistine. His bride in Timnah. A woman in Gaza the text plainly calls a harlot. But not Delilah. The Bible never calls her a Philistine. It never even calls her a harlot, though it had used that very word, without blinking, for the woman in Gaza just before her. For Delilah, it holds the word back. It tells us only that she lived in the valley, and that silence leaves a strange, unsettling gap. She may not have been a foreigner at all. She may have been one of Samson's own people, an Israelite, bought with Philistine silver. That is the deeper horror. Not only that the enemy wanted him dead, but that one of his own kind might have sold him for a price. And what a price. The 5 Philistine lords come to her in person. These lords have a title, Saranim. It's not a Hebrew word. It came from the Aegean, with the Philistines. Some scholars trace it forward to the Greek word tyrannos, the root of our word tyrant. 5 tyrants, pooling their treasuries for one woman. 1,100 pieces of silver from each of them, an impossible sum, freedom for life. For that price, she does not seduce him in the shadows. She asks him openly, again and again, where his strength lies. 3 times he lies. 3 times she springs the trap and proves he lied. And still he stays. The last lie is the closest to the truth. "Weave my hair into your loom," he says. That loom is not a small detail. Across the ancient world, the loom was a symbol of a woman weaving a man into her power. Samson literally lets the sign of his vow be woven into a Philistine machine, then worn down until his soul was vexed to death. He tells her everything. The hair, the vow, the crown he has never once cut. She lulls him to sleep on her knees. A man comes. The 7 locks fall. And here is the saddest sentence in the book. He did not know that the Lord had left him. He had drunk the wine. He had eaten from the dead. But the strength was never in the hair. The hair was only the last thread of a vow he had already unraveled, thread by thread, for 20 years. He wakes and shakes himself and expects to be strong, because he thought the gift was his. He never understood it was only ever alone. They take him down to Gaza. They put out his eyes. The man whose every fall began with what looked right in his eyes now has no eyes at all. They bind him in bronze and set him to grind grain at the mill. That punishment was chosen with care. Pushing a millstone was the work of oxen, and grinding grain by hand was the work of women and slaves. So they made the strong man a beast, and then made the beast a servant. Every layer of it was designed to unmake him. And there is a bitter irony in the grain itself, because of the god they served. His name was Dagon. Most people picture Dagon as a fish god, half man, half fish. That picture is wrong. It's so wrong we gave it an entire episode of its own on this channel. Dagon was never a fish god, the second in our Canaanite gods series. If you missed it, go back and watch it. For now, one fact about him is all we need. Dagon was a grain god. the god of the harvest. The Philistines, new to farming this rich coast, took him up to bless their fields. So look at what they've done. They have taken the man who once burned their harvest and chained him to a mill to grind grain as an offering to the god of grain. His humiliation has become an act of worship to Dagon. And that is the real war in this story, not Israel against Philistia. In the ancient mind, when nations fought, their gods fought. To capture Yahweh's champion, blind him, and set him grinding in Dagon's shadow, that was proof, they believed, that Dagon was the stronger god. So they hold a festival to celebrate it. They fill the great temple of Dagon. They bring the blind man out to make sport of him. They stand him between the two central pillars of the hall. For a long time, skeptics laughed at this. 2 pillars, close enough for one man to touch, holding up a building full of thousands? Impossible, they said. Then archaeologists dug up Philistine temples, at Tell Qasile, at Ekron, and found exactly that. 2 wooden cedar pillars on round stone bases set close together down the center of the hall. Not built into the floor, just resting on the stone. Engineers have studied what that means. A pillar that only rests on its base does not need to be broken. It needs to be rocked. Push it far enough off its base, and gravity, which was holding it up, suddenly begins pulling it down. Past a certain point, the roof brings itself down. No further strength required. Which is precisely what the blind man does. He asks to lean on the pillars, and he prays. For the first time in his life, he prays a real prayer. Sovereign Lord, remember me. Strengthen me just once more. Not give me back my toy. Remember me. The arrogance is gone. Only dependence is left. He braces against the 2 pillars. He pushes. And the House of Dagon comes down on the lords of the Philistines and on Samson. The text says he killed more in his death than in all his life. The strongest man went all the way down. And at the very bottom, for the first and only time, he looked up. Now step back from the man, because the writers of this book were doing something larger. One scholar, Edward Greenstein, called the whole Samson story a riddle, and said the answer to the riddle is Israel. Watch how it fits. Samson was set apart by a vow. Israel was set apart by a covenant. Samson could not stop chasing foreign women. Israel could not stop chasing foreign gods. Samson kept going down, down, down into the enemy's world. So did the nation. And look at how his story ends. Betrayed by those he trusted. His eyes put out. Bound in bronze. Dragged in chains to a foreign prison. Now hold that beside the last king of Judah, Zedekiah, centuries later. Betrayed. His eyes put out. Bound in bronze. Dragged to Babylon. The same 4 things in the same order. Samson is not just a strong man. He is a portrait of a whole people, painted in advance. A nation of enormous strength and no self-control. Given everything. Guarding nothing. Blind long before anyone touched their eyes. And there is one more mystery at the edge of the map. Samson was a Danite, from the tribe of Dan. And Dan is the strangest tribe in the Bible. Born to a servant woman, barely listed in the family trees. Left out of Chronicles entirely. An old song even asks, oddly, Dan, why did he stay by the ships? Ships, for an inland tribe. Some scholars, beginning with the archaeologist Yigael Yadin, proposed a bold theory. And I want to be clear that it is a theory, not the plain teaching of Scripture. They noticed a sea people in the Egyptian records called the Denyen. And they wondered, could the tribe of Dan and the Denyen be connected? They pointed to Greek legends of the Danaoi, seafarers who sailed from Egypt, to the hero Heracles, who strangled a lion bare-handed, just as Samson did, to riddle contests and serpents woven into both traditions. It is a fascinating idea. Other scholars, Finkelstein among them, call it far too thin to prove. We hold it loosely, as a question, not a conclusion. But it presses on something the text already says out loud. Samson never really left the Philistine world. He married into it. He drank in it. He died in it. He was a man of the border. And the border is where Israel kept losing itself. The strongest judge 20 years in Israel ended blind, in the dark, under a fallen roof. That is where the judges' ages were heading all along. Everyone doing what was right in his own eyes, until no one could see at all. But Samson was not the first to make a reckless vow in that dark age. Before him, up in the highlands of Gilead, there was another deliverer, an outcast, a son no one wanted, a brilliant, desperate man. He too would raise his hand to God and make a promise that would win him a war and cost him the one thing he loved most in the world. His name was Jephthah, and his vow is the most terrible in the Bible. That is where we go next.